Welcome everyone. I've just started recording. So welcome again to another series of CPD in 43. Today is our March event, which is Chartered Environmentalist. You can lead the way. We've got a number of speakers who are going to be presenting this. We've got James Banks from Central Office. We've got Matthew Brooke-Peat, who is a Chartered Environmentalist. And also we've got Sarah Region from CIAT. And she'll be presenting in regards to the Institute on that regard. So as usual, what I'll do is I will be here in the background. Please do ask any questions that you have in the chat box. We will be having a Q&A session towards the end, but without further ado, I'll hand it straight over to our speakers and we'll catch up at the Q&A session.
Okay. Thank you, Usman. So yeah, I'm James Banks, Head of Membership at CIAT. So CIAT are a licensing body through the Society of the Environment to award the Chartered Environmentalist qualification to those individuals that can demonstrate the relevant knowledge, experience and commitment to apply sustainable and best practice within their areas of expertise, whether that's UK or anywhere around the world. So it's open to anybody that wants to apply. And the idea is this session will give you a bit of insight about the process from CIAT's perspective, the benefits from the Society for the Environment, and also with Matthew's insight as an assessor, the type of evidence we'd expect to see to meet the competencies to get the qualification. So if I'll pass over to Sarah now to cover the aspects around the viewpoints from the Society for the Environment, and then I'll come back to you a bit later on.
Thank you, James. And as noted, I'm Sarah and I'm the Policy and Communications Officer at the Society for the Environment. And just firstly, thank you for the invitation to speak today. It's great to be part of this webinar. So if I could just, sorry, are we sharing the slides? I just can't see them at the moment.
Hold on, I'll do it again, just bear with. Can we see those now?
Yes,
Sorry,
I can
apologies.
anyway, so should be good. Thank you. So firstly, I just wanted to touch a little bit on Society for the Environment and our Royal Charter, because it links into what I'm going to say about why a CM is important. So our Royal Charter requires us to champion sustainability via environmental professionalism. And just to say a little bit more about what this means. So in terms of, I think we'd all agree that we have, huge environmental challenges in front of us, and we need solutions to these. But we don't just need any solutions, we need solutions that are evidence-based and robust. And we believe very strongly at the Society for the Environment that, experts are the answer, and these experts need to be clearly recognisable as experts. So in terms of countering the greenwashing that we're seeing as well. So in that sense, Chartered Environmentalist registration acts as proof of an excellent level of environmental knowledge and experience, as well as a commitment to professional standards. So every Chartered Environmentalist has to sign our code of professional conduct, and also meet the CM competencies, which I think Matthew is going to cover a little bit more later on. And in terms of the value of Chartered Environmentalists, so we know that this is recognised by employers. So examples of this include large consultancies who now require CEnv registration to sign off certain environmental reports. And we also know that others are offering financial incentives to encourage staff to pursue CEnv as well. So just in terms of the benefits of Chartered Environmentalists, so there are currently over 7,500 CMs working across a diverse range of sectors. And what do they tell us about the benefits of holding CEnv? So there are a number listed on the slide in front of you, but I would structure these into three main categories. So the first one being credibility, so external credibility, and this comes out as the top benefit when we ask CMs why they gain the registration and what they see as, like say, the main advantage. So this is clients and stakeholders know that you've met the gold standard in terms of, like I say, environmental knowledge, environmental competence. The second one being around confidence. So this is more internal. So the self-confidence that people feel in terms of the boost of having been externally verified by your peers, which is really crucial, that sort of peer review, and you've been recognized as having that excellent environmental competence. Also, the benefit of a dedicated environmental qualification. So some people talk about that they've got other qualifications or registrations, but this one is, you know, is specifically related to the environment, really showcases that they've met that criteria. And then the third one is around opportunity. So this covers a range of opportunities, really. So first one being speaker opportunities. So for example, we have a flagship World Environment Day and awards event in June, and those speaker opportunities are for chartered environmentalists. So there's that opportunity to showcase your expertise. Also to gain discounts, discounted tickets for events, basically, as well. Recognition through our online directory of registrants, and also around earnings potential. So the Institution of Environmental Sciences, who are another one of our licensed members, they did a piece of research where they found that their CIAT members got paid on average 33% more than their members who are not CMs. And then the last one I just wanted to emphasize is around collaboration and networking amongst the network of chartered environmentalists. So for example, probably one of the most leading examples that we've got of this is our Soils and Stones project, which brings together chartered environmentalists across a huge range of sectors, so forestry, agriculture, built environment, construction, and land management. And basically, they're all working together to raise the profile of soils and soil health in terms of from a policy perspective, but also sharing good practice as well, and what good practice looks like in that area. And we've become very recognised for this in terms of DEFRA, and also our evidence to the inquiry into soil health last year fed into the recommendations that the inquiry published. So we're seeing a lot of results from that as well. So I think that covers what I wanted to talk about today. Just a reminder that I'm happy to take questions at the end, and if you can pop your questions into your toolbar, that would be great, and we can pick them up later.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So again, I'm just going to talk about it from a sort of CIAT perspective. So we run the register, which is accessible for chartered architectural technologists. So you need to have qualified with CIAT at that chartered member level to potentially apply to become a chartered environmentalist. The other eligibility requirements to apply, would you need to have a relevant master's degree or be able to demonstrate an equivalent level of knowledge through the application and the qualification process. You'll need to have sufficient relevant and responsible experience to demonstrate the competency. So you'll need project-based outputs within your application to demonstrate what you've actually delivered and what you've done in practice to meet the competencies that we'll come to. Obviously, if you've got the ability to produce and deliver that output, then you'd have an underpinning knowledge of facets related to environmental impact and environmental knowledge. So again, we need to see that knowledge and practical experience combined into one holistic application. And as alluded to by Sarah, there is a code of ethics for the Society of the Environment that you agree to abide by. There's CIAT's code of conduct, and there's a specific CPD requirements for registration as a chartered environmentalist through the CIAT register. And if you've looked at it or you haven't, and you want to know a bit more about the assessment process, so in my view, it's a two-stage process. So you need to complete an application form. You need to have to hand your relevant academic and/or professional qualifications to support your submission, an up-to-date CV. Within the application form, you're going to provide a summary of your experience to give an overview of where you are and your environmental credentials. You're going to need to address the competency statements that Matthew's going to cover in the next 4 slides. And by writing a narrative against the statements, you're going to need to back up those statements with supporting documentary evidence, which is what you do day to day whilst working on projects. There's a £200 application fee to submit your stage 1 steps for review by the panel. And we accept applications within 3 one-month windows throughout the year. So the submission deadlines are April, August, and December. So anything from the 1st to the 31st or the 30th are acceptable within those 3-month periods. So again, if you're thinking about it, you can set yourself a deadline when I'm going to aim for the August window to submit my stage 1 application. Subject to us being happy with what you've submitted in your stage 1 package, then your stage 2 professional review interview would be arranged by CIAT, and I'll talk about the interview after Matthew's talked about the competencies within the forthcoming slides. So I'll pass over to Matthew at this point. I can't actually hear Matthew at this point. I don't know if it's the same for anybody else.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
hear him either.
Sorry, my apologies. I think my mic was muted. So, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Matthew Brooke-Peats, and I'm just going to say a little bit about myself in terms of where I sit in terms of CEnv assessment within CIAT, and a bit about my background, because I think that's quite important to the sort of having this overview of the context that the Chartered Environmentalist sits within, particularly within CIAT. So I'm a fellow of CIAT, and I've held many roles contributing to the running of the Institute and the development of architecture technology over the years. I'm formerly a Vice President Education, and I've been a member of the Education Board since 2013, and I chair accreditation visits. Externally, I'm a member of the Construction Industry Council Education and Future Skills Committee, and I've been involved in various things like the Quality Assurance Agency Subject Benchmark Statement Review, and more recently for the Institute Professional Standards Framework, which is the process that you go through to become a Chartered Architectural Technologist. I've been a full member of the Institute since 2004 and a Chartered Environmentalist through the CIOB since 2007, and I've assessed Chartered Environmentalist applications for CIAT since 2008, and then I became a moderator for that process in 2022. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go through the competencies that you've got to demonstrate your abilities to meet those competencies during your application. So what I'll do is I'll go through each one in turn, and then I will sort of cover all those within that grouping, if you like. So competency A1 is understand the sustainability principles applicable to the management of the environment. A2 is apply environmental knowledge and principles in pursuit of sustainable environmental management. And A3 is identify, analyse and anticipate the impact of problems and environmental trends to develop practical sustainable solutions. So you can see here that all those within the group of competence A focus on the application of knowledge and understanding of the environment to further the aims of sustainability and how it relates specifically in the context of being a practicing architectural technologist. So a couple of things to point out here which are important. First of all is, as James said earlier, you've got to already be a chartered architectural technologist to actually apply to become a chartered environmentalist. And the thing you will need to do when you're actually evidencing these competencies is you need to submit extracts of evidence, and you need to clearly signpost that in your application. So we don't want reams and reams of evidence which constitutes everything on a project. We want extracts of information that's relevant to your statements you're making against each of these competencies, and then you're going to signpost that to where it's found in the application. So looking at those three criteria, they can apply. Well, sorry, I'll backtrack here a little bit actually. So you've got the understanding and then the application of it. So the understanding, really, you need to be making statements about what qualifications you've got, which meets its competency. So if you've got an MSc in sustainable architecture or you know, a similar type of qualification, then you can get that in there. So it's you know, what do you know, or the scope of what you know, really. We don't need large statements about in detail of environmental issues. What we need to know is the scope of what you know and how you know it. So is it by qualification, or is it by equivalent experience built up over several years? So what you need to do there is actually explain, you know, where you've got the experience and what type of experience it was that developed that knowledge. Then you've got to be able to apply that knowledge. So you've got to give us examples of how you actually apply it in practice on projects or within an organisation. So when I said I'd backtrack earlier, what I was coming on to is that these competencies can relate to specific projects when you're giving evidence, or it could be to a much wider extent within an organisation you work for or a wider collective of organisations that you interact with. So it can be different sort of scales, if you like, in that respect. And the third competency there really relates to, you know, the wider context that being a chartered environmentalist sits in terms of, in this case, the construction industry and architectural practice, although we acknowledge you may be, you know, in a design management role for a contractor, or you may be an academic or whatever. But the point is that you can take issues from the contemporary practice, whatever that practice is, and identify what the issues are, and, you know, show that you can develop a practical response to those and put things in place. So can we go for the next slide, please, James? So competency B, so B1 is promote behavioural and cultural change by influencing others to secure environmental improvements that go beyond statutory requirements. B2 is develop and maintain a strategic environmental approach, and B3 is demonstrate leadership and management skills. So you can see here that competency B relates to promoting good practice with regard to leading sustainable management of the environment. B1, as it says there, about going beyond statutory requirements. So it's not just complying with Part L of the building regulations or other requirements that may be in place for the particular project you're working on. What else are you doing that is promoting sustainable practice? You know, that's what you need to convey there. Develop and maintain strategic environmental approach and demonstrate leadership and management skills. Again, these don't necessarily have to be just at project level. They can be at organisational level or even cross organisations if necessary there. So, you know, it could be a strategy you've put in place for a particular project, or it could be with how a practice deals with certain issues, such as material specification, changing requirements in the wider context, you know, for funding, in terms of meeting sustainability objectives and all those kind of things. There could be a whole host of different things that come into play here that you could use as evidence for that. So can I have the next slide, please, James? Competency C, we've got C1, which is communicate the environmental case confidently, clearly, autonomously, and confidently, clearly, autonomously, and competently. And C2, which is ability to liaise with, negotiate with, handle conflict, and advise others in individual and or group environments, either as a leader or a member. So a few things to say here really is that we recognise that you know, not everybody will be at senior management level. You know, you could be working in large organisations where there's quite a significant hierarchy in place. What's important for you though is to actually convey your competence in the context of your level and what you engage with, whether it's either at project level or organisation level. Now with this, in any kind of practice, you're going to run into issues at times, and what we're looking for here is evidence of how do you actually address those issues, and how do you resolve conflict and move a project or development forwards, whatever that may be. And obviously that's got to be from a environmental / sustainability perspective, as all of this has. And as I said right at the beginning, you know, you've got to be a chartered architectural technologist to apply to become a chartered environmentalist under CIAT. You know, you've been through this process to become a chartered architectural technologist by this stage, and it's a very similar process in that you submit extracts and written statements, and you signpost the two together. Now, it may be you've recently qualified, and it might be that you can use some of the same material again in terms of the projects, but the focus has to shift from just being an architectural technologist to also focusing on sustainability and the environment. So, you know, in the past we've had questions from people that specialise in certain areas, such as BIM and so on. And the important thing is that you know, it's absolutely fine to specialise and be able to go through this process, providing you can evidence your competencies in that realm of environmental and sustainability. So next slide, please, James. Competency D1 is plan, undertake and evaluate CPD activities to maintain and enhance competence in the area of practice. D2 is assess and resolve environmental ethical issues. And D3 is understand, demonstrate, advocate compliance with relevant codes of conduct and practice. So competency D is about personal commitments to professional standards, recognising obligations to society, the profession and the environment, which includes CPD and codes of conduct. What you will find here is that you've actually got at the very minimum 2 sets of responsibilities to adhere to. One of them is that of the CIAT Code of Conduct, and the other one is the Society of the Environment Code of Professional Conduct. And so that really comes under the competency D3, that you're demonstrating that you are actually doing that. Now, as part of those codes of competency, or codes of conduct rather, I should say, there is a CPD requirement in terms of maintaining CPD. Now, what we're looking for here is maintaining CPD within the realm of sustainability and environmental topics. So yes, it can be specialised. Personally, I do a lot of sort of building physics and energy thermal performance related CPD, because that's the sphere I operate in, but it could be more specialised to what you do. And the important thing is you've got to be able to demonstrate that you actually plan your CPD in this area. You record it, and you plan where you're going next, and it's a wider development of yourself, all within environmental and sustainability. D2 about assessing and resolving environmental ethical issues. Now this is a bit of an interesting one here, because you know, you've got a few things that could be going on. Quite often anything that's addressing sustainability can be challenged by clients which are perhaps not that well informed in those matters, and they may look to value engineer features out or change specifications to bring down costs. So, you know, you've got the ethical responsibilities there of actually, you know, trying to be more sustainable and develop environmental designs or sound designs, I should say, and addressing that and trying to push back to be doing the right thing. But also actually in your own decision making as well. It might be that you know, addressing short-term issues against long-terms. It might be that environmentally short-term, some of the specification decisions might not be the best you could make, but longer term they make more sense. You know, so those kind of issues, you're bound to come across those. So it's just a case of picking them out and identifying them. And in terms of code of conduct and practice, there's also wider things beyond CIAT and Society for Environment codes of practice. You know, you've also got anything else you might be involved in as well, passive house, retrofit coordinator. Then you come into standards as well, such as British standards, and so on, when you're dealing with specific areas that fall within the realm of a chartered environmentalist that specialises in whatever it is that you may do. So on that, I think that brings my slides to an end.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. Very comprehensive. So you've got a good overview of what the requirements are. It's probably advisable just to go onto the CIAT website, look at Chartered Environmentalist page, look at the application form, look at the candidate guidance notes, review what might be required. And when you submit your stage 1 and all that goes through the review process, if the panel of assessors are happy, then they'll invite you to sit your professional interview, which is your stage 2 to become a chartered environmentalist. So it's £200 for stage 1, it's £50 for stage 2. It's going to be a Zoom interview. It'll last 45 minutes and it'll be a discussion and assessment in relation to your application and your narrative addressing the competencies to ensure that you're suitable to uphold the standards of a chartered environmentalist. And upon successful election for registration, then there'll be a £90 chartered environmentalist annual subscription to pay. So if you're thinking about it and you're potentially ready to submit, just a few things to remember, again, reinforcing what I said earlier, make sure you've got an up-to-date CV, have copies of relevant academic and or professional qualifications that you feel would support your application, a CPD record, which will help you meet competency D and potentially meet the CIAT requirements as well. Be ready to provide a summary of your experience in relation to the application form criteria, 2 case studies, your written competency statements against the 4 areas, provide contextualized evidence of relevance against the specific points. You will need 2 supportive referee declarations as well, and you'll need to pay the applicable fee. So we sort of covered quite a bit of it in detail. I think it's probably best to stop the presentation and open it up for any discussions from the floor. So I shall stop sharing my screen and we shall pass back to Usman, who will compare from here.
Thank you for that. That was really interesting. Really interesting to hear for the 3 different perspectives as well. We've got a question in from Nathan. He's asking specifically for declaration of referees, the application notes former employer. The question specifically is, does this employer require a relevant chartership?
I would have to say, can you send me an email on this? Because one of my team actually manages the applications for registrations and I can't remember off the top of my head. So if you email me, I'll provide clarity unless Sarah or Matthew knows off the top of their head.
Yeah, if I can come in here, actually, you'd expect them to be a chartered professional. They don't have to be a chartered environmentalist or even a chartered architectural technologist, but they do need to be a chartered professional. Because what they're actually confirming is that that's the type of work you're engaging in, and the level it's at in terms of it's of a professional standard. You know, so yeah, they have to be chartered of some kind. So chartered architect, surveyor, engineer, any of those really.
Great. If anyone else has any questions, please do add them into the chat box. But for the moment, I'll take over the questions for a second. And probably one which comes up quite regularly is obviously we've got retrofit assessor, we've got passive house, we've got green building council, and so on. We've got a few other bits and bobs all out there. I just want to understand where does this sit within that sphere? Probably a question for partly both from Sarah and Matthew, I guess.
Well,
Matthew,
I suppose the thing.
Sorry,
go on, Sarah. Okay. What I would say about this is that chartered environmentalist is a chartered professional qualification. So you know it's that parity with all the other chartered professions. Things like passive house designer, retrofit coordinator, and so on. Their occupational training really is what they are, with some form of accreditation to it. So whilst it gives you a status that you can serve a particular function with those, chartered environmentalist is much wider than it. So you know it's a bit more encompassing, I should say, and what it indicates is that you operate at a particular level within the realm of sustainability and environmental management.
Yeah, if I could just echo that, and sort of what I was talking about before in terms of the amount of different sectors that are involved in the Swords and Stones project, is bringing together all those different sectors. So all those chartered environmentalists that are involved have all met that externally verified standard, that gold standard of chartered environmentalists, but they're sharing all this knowledge that they've got from all the different sectors as well. So it's like Matthew said, really, it's the all-encompassing cross-sector perspective that you gain from being a chartered environmentalist, really.
Thank you. We've got a question in from Margaret. Please confirm how an application would relate to someone between jobs. It's probably that nuance between sort of working on projects and then jumping to other projects in another firm. So that'd be an interesting point, probably relevant to other types of charterships applications, but obviously if you specifically relate it to this, please.
Okay, so if you're providing competency of experience through outputs delivered, you ideally need to be able to provide that documentation within your application so that the panel can make an assessment. But, you know, we can't determine competency based on you saying I worked here and I did that, but I can't provide any documentation or evidence of my outputs. It'd be the same for chartership with CIAT. You need to provide a portfolio of supporting evidence. So how you go about accessing that evidence you need is up to you as an individual, but we would need to see that for CEnv or for Chartered AT.
Yeah, the issue is not actually being between employments at the time, as James says. It's actually providing the evidence that's the challenge there, not your current state.
Great. We don't seem to have any other questions coming in. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, Margaret. Obviously, if you do have any specific questions that you'd like to pose to the panel, please do reach out to them individually. They'll be more than willing to sort of discuss this in further detail. One thing is apparent is that obviously if you are looking at doing this, is you just need to make a concerted effort in regards to sort of collating the information, having the relevant justification there ready for your review for chartership. As highlighted by both Matthew and Sarah, this is obviously you highlighting that you're going for a chartership level as opposed to on-the-job training in a specific area. This is almost looking as if you're encompassing this as a specialism that you are able to sort of help with in a holistic manner. So please do bear that in mind when you are looking at collating relevant information. One thing I'd like to do, obviously, if any other questions do come in, please, no, there's no other questions. If there is one that does come in, I'll jump in. However, is there any closing remarks that any of you would like to sort of say, Matthew, Sarah, or James?
If I could go first, so if there's anyone in the room that's not a CIAT associate or affiliate, or you're not a chartered architectural technologist yet, we do actually offer an online short course that's delivered over Teams, and I'm willing to extend the invite. It's free to any of you that would like to sit that course. It's commencing next Wednesday at midday over Teams, and I've put the information in the chat box. If you'd like to register for that course, you're more than welcome to come along to see what type of evidence and the requirements are to meet the stages 1, 2, and 3 to become a chartered member with CIAT. If this CEnv is something that you want as well and you don't quite have your chartership with CIAT just yet.
Thank you. If we hand it to Matthew.
Yeah, just following on from what James was saying there, that for those that haven't become a chartered architectural technologist yet, you know, obviously you want to prioritise that application first, but there's nothing wrong with using the same evidence for the chartered environmentalist application, but it has to be sustainability/environmental focused. So yeah, and I find actually architectural technology lends itself to being a chartered environmentalist as well, as long as you are going beyond the minimum requirements for building developments. You know, so and there's lots of specialisms as well that you can draw evidence from as well. You know, quite easily. I've found we get all kinds of people that have applied to us, and it's quite diverse in terms of background. So yeah, good luck.
And Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add to what's already been said, I think from a CIAT perspective, it would be to emphasise the amount of resources and guidance and support that's available. So I've included some of the links to various resources in the chat. So we do, you know, webinars, drop-in sessions, blogs like top tip blogs, that sort of thing. So hopefully, you know, all your questions will be answered by those, but also don't hesitate to get in touch with the CIAT team as well, and we can help with any questions directly as well.
Great, thank you so much. We'll follow this up with an email to all attendees with the presentation slides and also relevant contact details. But yeah, if you guys have any other further questions on this matter, please do reach out. And we look forward to seeing you at future CPDs. Just to sort of highlight, we have scheduled the entire year already, so we'll be releasing that information in due course. Firstly, obviously, I'd like to thank James, Matthew, and Sarah for today's event. Very much appreciated. That was obviously the Chartered Environmentalist You Can Lead the Way event that we had today. We have the next event that we have is in April, which will be the 17th of April at the same time. It's the importance of drainage surveying from a senior member within the Drainage Institute. So that would be an interesting one there. And then the following one to that we have in May, which is the 15th of May, is from Eileen Round from ARC Jobs, and it will be specifically on salaries, cost of living, national minimum wage, and more. So please do look out for these two events, which will be advertised via relevant channels, and then also the subsequent ones which have already been scheduled for the remainder of the year will be advertised in due course. We are looking for events for 2025, so please do suggest anything to myself or central office directly. And we will endeavour to field those subject matters or specific talks that you guys suggest. So thank you again to everyone for attending. Thank you again to the speakers, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers, Matthew, Sarah.
Thank you.
Till next time. Cheers. Usman, I'll see you Friday.